Welcome. My name is Jose Anunciato, and I think we're all here for CS 5610. Am I in the right room? Yes. Yeah, that's me over here. This is the website for the course, it should be available through an invitation, a Piazza invitation. You should all have received a Piazza invitation. Everybody received an invitation? Anybody has not received the invitation? If you haven't, see me at the break or after class, and I'll send you an invitation. From there, you should be able to see all the chat that is going to go on for the next 6-7 weeks. It is a summer one, right? So it's only 6-7 weeks. So it goes by really, really fast. So don't blink, or you'll miss it. If you received the invitation, if you go to resources, you'll see myself, and notice that the office hours, Mondays and Wednesdays, 3 to 5:30 actually, right? 5:30 because usually these start at 6, but I don't know if this semester starts at 5:30. It's at 460 West Village H. Actually, it's 460A West Village H. That's the College of Computer Science, 4th floor. Also, the TAs are going to be adding themselves here as well and adding their own office hours. Also, there's a couple of resources here. There's links to all the assignments. There are going to be 6 assignments and 6 quizzes. Typically, in a normal semester, it's 1 week an assignment, 1 week a quiz, 1 week an assignment, 1 week a quiz. On a summer one, everything is squished together. So it's the assignment and the quiz right after, the assignment and the quiz right after. So it's really, really tight. Okay, so everything goes twice as fast. All right, so just hold on. Also here there's a link to the requirements of the project, the final project. You will be required to create your own project. You can choose what it is that you want to do. And as long as you're within these requirements, you're free to do whatever you want. If whatever you want to do is a little bit outside of the requirements, come see me. We can negotiate. But if you fall within those boundaries, you don't need to ask me for permission. Right? You can do whatever you want. Okay? Only ask me if you think you're not going to meet the requirements, or if you want to do something a little outside or something more innovative. But I think it's broad enough that it should encompass most of what you might want to do. All right. Okay. What else? All right, so this is the homepage of the portal. This is myself. This is the other instructor. He's teaching an online version of this. This is the syllabus. We're gonna be focusing on single page applications. Hello. Right, so we're going to be working on building single-page applications on this course. Okay, it's quite different from what you might have worked on before on other web applications. So we're not using server-side technologies such as PHP or Python or JSPs or ASPs. All those are server-side technologies. The lab stack. All those are server-side technologies that allow you to render dynamic applications on the server. Okay, technology has moved on a little bit. It's mostly today you find applications, all the Google applications, all the Facebooks and LinkedIn, most applications today are moving towards single-page applications where you do most of the rendering on the client side. So we'll discuss a little bit about the history. Where we've been, where we are now, where we might go, and see where are we right now historically in web development. Here's a little bit of myself. So the main way we're going to communicate this semester is through Piazza, but I'm also available by phone. This is my personal phone number. Don't share it, but feel free to give me a call if I don't answer right away. Leave me a message. I'll get back to you. If I don't answer, it's either I'm teaching or I'm in a meeting with a student or faculty. Also, feel free to text me. Give me some idea what it's about, especially if you're the undergrad or your grad. But the main mechanism for us communicating is Piazza. TAs are going to be monitoring this all day, right? I'll also be monitoring. I'll try to get back to you within the hour, or one of the TAs will get back to you as well. If you need help one-on-one, my office hours Mondays and Wednesdays, right, between 3 and 5:30. But throughout the week, if we could do some remote help as well. We can jump on a Google Hangout. You can maybe you can call me right before. And we can agree on a particular time, and we can jump on a Google Hangout and we can share screens and whatnot. We are going to be using GitHub for submitting all our source code. I assume most of you have some familiarity with GitHub, right? So that especially is going to be helpful for us to be able to help you. If you have a question, if you're running into you're stuck in something, or you're debugging and you're spending more time than you think you need, and you're going to ask something on Piazza, don't ask a generic question. Ask a very specific question. Maybe copy or link to your GitHub, right, to the file where you think the problem is, right. Also, letting us know that you've done some effort at solving it yourself. Send us a link to your GitHub, right, or even the file where you think the problem is, and so that we can help you, right. It'll be easier for us, the TAs and myself, to clone down your project, clone down your repository, run it locally on our machines, and try to reproduce the problem and then get back to you, right? Don't make a vague question. It's easier if you help us help you, okay? So that we can get back to you with a more informed solution, okay? For Google Hangout, you can just use my Gmail account, right? I do receive a lot of email, so it's the least efficient way to get a hold of me. Nevertheless, if you do need to send me an email, please use the Husky account that you register with. I've made a filter, right, that I catch everybody's email into this one filter, so that I see at the top that to help me get back to you more efficiently. But again, phone and Piazza are the best way to get a hold of me. There's going to be six assignments and 6 quizzes. All the assignments are going to be due that following Sunday. So assignment 1 is due this Sunday, and then every Sunday after that. And the quiz is just going to be 1 week after, right? Whatever we see. So no quiz this week, but then next Wednesday, right, there'll be the first quiz covering the material we saw today, this week, and a little bit of what next week, right? Again, it's a very short cycle, right? So you have to be right on top of it, okay? So yeah, six assignments and 6 quizzes. The project, there's a link here for the project requirements. Again, I think it's pretty broad of what we're asking you to do. You can work in teams of up to 3 people, so 1 to 3 people. But the more people in your team, the more complex we expect the project to be. Okay, and I've laid out some mechanisms by which what do I mean as more complex, okay, and the project requirements, right? And we'll go over that a little later. In the assignments, we're going to be working together, building an application together, right, throughout the semester. Right? So we're all going to build the same thing throughout the semester. First, looking at the front end, then the middle tier, then the database, and so on, and then securing it. You're following a fairly common progression that works academically and also in industry. Okay? And the intention is that whatever you learn in the assignments, hopefully, it will be translatable directly onto your project. Right? Ideally, you should be able to reuse any and all parts of the assignment and refactor it and modify it to so that you can reuse it in the project. Okay? In the project, you're supposed to build whatever you want. Right? You get to choose. Right? So it's kind of like see me do it. Right? So I'll be doing a lot of coding here in front of you. You'll see me do it. Then you get to practice doing it yourself in the assignments, and then you get to do it on your own on the project. So I'm trying to use that that philosophy. Watch me do it, then I watch you do it, and then you go and do it yourself. Okay. Let's see. Project. Yeah. So 6 quizzes. There's no final. That last week that's supposed to be for finals. The TAs and myself are going to be very, very busy grading the projects. And so we'll have limited access that last week. It's meant for final exams anyway, right? So it should be all done. So that last week with no exams. For the undergrads, the lowest quiz will be dropped, not for the graduate. Okay. So for the undergrads, the last quiz is dropped. The lowest quiz is dropped, but not for the graduate. Yes? Okay. And sometimes there's a confusion there. Here's the grading and the categories. So the largest portion of the grade is your project, of you having worked something on your own. It's okay if 2 people are working on something similar or the same domain, but certainly your work has to be yours, unless you work together. Okay. If you work together, then naturally the project needs to be a little more complex. Yes. But not you start working together, then halfway through it you decide not to work together, and then you give me exactly the same code base. Okay, so that's not that. Okay, it has happened. All right, so 40% of the grade is the project. The second highest one is the assignments, which is 35%. So the assignments will be submitted just on GitHub. Okay, so you're not going to submit code on Blackboard or anything like that. On Blackboard, we're only going to be using Blackboard for you to submit the URLs of your GitHub. Give me the URL of where you're hosting this remotely on a server. But no code submission on Blackboard. Instead, you'll submit it on GitHub. You'll push your latest commit, before Sunday at midnight. You'll tag it or create a release. Okay, tag it saying assignment 1 or assignment 2, assignment 3, or whatever, right? And that's what we're going to grade. Okay, so whatever you tag, and we'll take the timestamp of when you tagged it. Don't forget to tag it. Okay, you tag it, and that's the version that we're going to clone down your project. Okay, and we'll grade whatever you released. Okay, if you forgot something and you have to go back and fix something before Sunday at midnight, you can release it again. Assignment 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. We'll just grade the very last version. All right. Anything submitted after Sunday at midnight will have a penalty of 1% per hour. So if you're 5 hours late, you'll lose 5 points. That's pretty easy, right? So if you need a little more time, it's okay. You don't have to ask me for permission. Okay, go ahead. You can take any obviously more than 100 hours. It just becomes 0, right? Yes.
Is that midnight Saturday into Sunday or Sunday into Monday?
Sunday to Monday. Yeah. Eastern time. All right. So the next one, obviously, the quizzes. There's again 6 quizzes, and they're some of them are multiple choice, some of them are fill in the blanks. Typically, I'll give you a snippet of code, and then I'll give you several fill in the blanks on the code for you to tell me what should go here that fulfills makes the code run. Okay. Typically, I'll make it so that casing doesn't matter, quotations doesn't matter, so that if you make a misspelling or you forgot quotes or double quotes, whatever, they'll be ignored. Okay. If you do have another misspelling that you want to suggest, I'll add it and it'll regrade. Okay. If it's within reason. Okay. GitHub. So GitHub will be kind of where you keep track of everything. Okay. This is new this semester. I'm experimenting on this. It's very often that students leave the project to the last month. In this case, maybe the last 2 weeks. I don't know. And I want to discourage you from doing that. Right? I want to encourage you to start now, right? Working on your project. Okay. And so on GitHub, I'm going to ask you to write what have you done, this week for your project. Okay. And I've delineated several milestones that you should be at, next week, then the following week, and so on and so forth. Okay. So by the end of next week, you should already have an idea of what you want to do, right? Obviously, that's 2 weeks, right? So in a normal semester, it would be a month. So you have a month to think about what you want. Here, again, everything is reduced, right? It's half. So start thinking right now what you want to do. Okay, what domain, what interests you, and there's very little wiggle room, right? There's very little wiggle room. So by the end of next week, in your wiki, you would post a description of what you want to work on, very, very broad, very general. A little bit of what you think you might do to solve this, ideally, you would. So as a requirement for the project is that you need to identify a third-party API about some domain that interests you, right? If you think of any domain, chances are there is a public API that you can query and retrieve free data out there, okay? And then following some criteria, it can provide free data that you can render in some way, okay? And so we're asking you to build an application around that, right? A web application around that. We're not building websites here. We're building applications, right? It happens to be an application running on a web stack, but it's an application, right? You're just like it would be maybe a desktop application, right? But this is an application that happens to be running on a web stack. Yes? So it's not websites like brochure websites or marketing websites. It's an application, right? We're building applications here, dynamic applications. So that's the first thing. Make sure that you start right now looking for an API for a domain or something that interests you. Okay. In the wiki, one of the milestones is tell me about your API. Okay, create some experiments that demonstrate that you know how to use this API, right? That you can query it for events around Boston or your favorite team, or recipes on how to cook something, or I don't know, whatever domain you choose, right? Or movies from IMDb or whatever. Okay, So choose an API. So one of the milestones is create a couple experiments that show that you can query, retrieve data, render this data somehow, right? And that you can then click on or select any one of items that you came back, and then maybe query more details about that item, okay? Like a master slave page, right? A master details page. So that's one of the milestones. I'll talk about it in more detail when we talk about the project. But in the wiki, you're asked to create several wiki pages that show progress that you've been working on the project. Yes, and we won't grade it right away. We'll grade it at the end with the project. Okay, but certainly we don't want these wiki pages being created the very last day. Okay, we suggest when they should be done by, but you're free to wiggle there. All right. Again, I'm experimenting this. I just don't want you to leave it at the end because you're just going to go nuts. All right. So at the end, the final is a homepage. This is kind of like a marketing page for you to sell yourself. Tell them about what you've done, what other projects you've been working on. From here, I should be able to get to everything that has to do with this course. Things that I should be able to get to the GitHub page, to the assignments, to the project. Everything that has to do with this project, with this course. It should look spectacular. Okay, things that you should be proud to, submit as a resume or as for a potential employer. Okay, I should be proud to share with the dean. All right, it says, hey, look what my students are working on. Okay. What else? Any questions so far? All right. So here's the agenda. This is notice there's two agendas here. If you scroll down, you see that there's two agendas. One is for full summer. Okay, that's the default agenda. That's another instructor is teaching the full summer version of this. We're doing the summer 1 version. Okay, which is it's a reduced, condensed agenda. So the first week, this week, will be mostly introduction and syllabus and setting up a development environment. Okay, by the end of this week, the first assignment on Sunday, by Sunday night, you should have a Node.js server running locally on your machine. You should have a database, MongoDB, running on your machine. You should have an IDE, WebStorm, installed on your machine. You should have GitHub on your machine. If you have a Mac, you already have GitHub. If you're on a Windows machine, you have to install a Windows client. Excuse me. And then you should also have a remote server running on Heroku or AWS or OpenShift or whatever you choose, right? Preferably Heroku, right? It'll just make it easier for the TAs and myself. But if you already have a server for other courses, whatnot, feel free to use that. But otherwise, please use Heroku. Okay? And so you have a remote Node.js server running on Heroku. You have a remote database running on MLab. And everything will be hosted on GitHub. Usually we can configure Heroku so that whenever you push something to GitHub, it deploys directly to Heroku right away. Okay. Ideally, what you have deployed on the remote server is always the very latest. Okay. Right. What else? So yeah. So today, this week, we're going to be installing our development environment. Also, I'll do some live coding just to give you a feel on what you're going to be working on, the technology stack that we're going to be using. We're going to be using the mean stack. Right, it's a fairly popular stack of a single page application stack using Angular in the front end, using Express and Node.js as a middle tier, and using MongoDB as the back end. Okay. Then next week we're going to be focusing on starting to get to build the application that we're going to be building together throughout the semester, right? For the assignments, right? The 6 assignments. We're all going to be building the same thing, okay? So basically, what will happen is that I'll get you started, right? I'll start with the first couple of pages, and I'll post all that source code on GitHub. Feel free to reuse any of my code, right, to get you started with your assignment, and I'll get as far as I can, and then you go on and finish off the rest of the assignment. Okay. And so next week we'll be working on getting started with the prototyping of this assignment, right? Of this application. It's a fairly common activity when you get started on any project is to create a prototype. Okay. Whenever somebody asks you to build a website for them or an application, typically you prototype it, right? And you provide it as a feedback to elicit some feedback from your client. And the client will say, oh, well, how about we move these pages around? We move a couple of things around, right? And typically you don't want to put too much effort into it because changes are going to be coming in. Once the feedback process has it's dying down and it becomes more stable, then we can make it for real. So the first week, next week, we'll do a lot of prototyping, just static HTML, static CSS. We're going to focus on the navigation part of this. We're going to focus on making it responsive so that it's we're going to be targeting mostly mobile phones and small screens, right? And following the mantra of mobile first. Okay, that's the largest demographics today, growing demographics on the web today. So certainly we want to cater to the largest audience, right? And currently, phones and tablets is the largest audience, right? So we want to make sure that our applications look good with that audience. So that's going to be the first assignment. The second assignment, week 3, we're going to come back and refactor that prototype. Okay, we're going to start adding JavaScript, Angular, jQuery, all the front end, client-side technology to start making this for real, right? And we're going to be adding dynamic content rendering using Angular. We're going to create controllers, web services, and introduce you to the model view controller design pattern. It's a very common design pattern for breaking up large applications into the smallest constituents. All throughout the course, we're going to be using a lot of good practices, industry standards on how to break up applications. At first, it'll look unnecessary to create so many directories and follow certain naming conventions. For throwaway code, small things, it's not really needed. But very, very soon, this will get very, very complex. Okay, and organizing your code and following naming conventions, and it'll make it easier to find where things are and understand how a project is laid out. And so I'm going to expect that you would do the same thing for the project. Okay, I'm going to follow industry standards that are very, very common in the industry, right? Well, there's a couple different ones, but we'll choose one and we'll stick to it all throughout the semester. And I believe will be very, very valuable when you go out there and do this for real in industry. So client side is there's no classes May 29th, so we're going to miss that Monday. So we're only going to meet that Wednesday right after Memorial Day. So here we're going to introduce server-side development. Maybe we'll start a little bit earlier, okay, so that we can compensate for that lost day, and maybe do a little longer days to compensate for that. But the fourth week we're going to introduce Node.js. We'll already have done a little bit of Node.js, enough to host our application, our static application. But then we're going to be using Node.js to provide data to our client-side application. Right? One of the things that we'll notice on a client-side application is that because it's running on the client, because it's running on a browser, it doesn't have access to any data. It doesn't have access to the file system, doesn't have access to a database, has very limited network access. The only network access that it has is back to the server for where it came from. Okay, so we'll introduce mechanisms that the server can expose the data through web services for clients to query and ask for data from a database, right? So we'll introduce how to do that. We'll introduce what are the best practices there of creating web services, RESTful services, how to set up Node.js and Express for mapping all these API calls back to your server. Okay. Also, will give us a chance to just like we can access our own APIs, we can access third-party APIs. Right? So we'll introduce how to access IMDb or Yelp or many of third-party APIs, which you will be expected to do for your projects. Right? So we'll do that then. Then we'll introduce NoSQL. We'll introduce MongoDB as our persistent storage. Up to this point, all the data will have either been stored on the client, which if you refresh, it's gone, or on the server, which if you restart the server, it's gone. So we'll introduce MongoDB as our persistent layer to store it in a database. We'll introduce Mongoose as the main library for interacting with MongoDB. We'll do some data modeling, creating different types of relationships, entities, one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many. How to do all these types of data modeling. Then we'll introduce security on how to secure a single page application, which is a little bit more involved than securing your classical server-side applications. On a server-side application, it's just enough to secure navigating to a particular page, or like the admin page or profile page. That just won't let you go there, right? And that's enough. In single-page applications, it's a little more involved. Not only do you need to protect a particular navigation, right? But you also have to protect all those services, right? All these data services that you've created above, right? Because those data services are also public, right? So you have to make sure that whoever's accessing those data services are also are authorized and they're authenticated. So it's a little more involved. Also, we're going to learn how to use third-party authentication authorities, like authenticating with Google or Facebook or Twitter, so that if folks have already an account elsewhere, they can use that account to log into your application. We'll also do some user management, like admin, what an admin would be able to do, how do you secure and make sure that only an admin with a world admin would be able to do certain things. So securing. And finally, the last topic is dynamic server pages. Who has done Python or PHP or ASP, JSP? Any server-side development? Okay, so if you've done some server-side development, then this is what it's going to be most familiar to you. Okay, notice it's the last topic. So very little server-side development. Okay, although it still has a fairly important place in web development. It's becoming less and less prevalent in today's modern web development technologies. Okay, but certainly Node.js and MeanStack can also do server-side dynamic server pages. So the last week, the 8th week, is going to be just project evaluation. That Sunday before that Monday, so Sunday the 25th, the project will be due. And that last week, the TAs and myself are just going to disappear. Okay, we're going to be very, very busy that week. There's 100 students that we need to grade. and you'll be graded in a random order. Well, anyway, it'll be due, right? But I typically allow students to keep working up until you would get like a text from us saying stop what you're doing. So make sure your project is always in a deliverable state, or in a stable state. You keep adding a couple of things, but be careful, don't break it, okay? Because that week is going to be very, very intense. Okay? So yeah. Any questions so far? All right.